Artur Beterbiev retains his light heavyweight titles with an 8th round TKO victory over Anthony Yarde. First of all, big respect to both guys because this was a great fight. They both left it all in the ring. They went all out and they gave the fans, both in the arena and watching on TV, a great spectacle. Now, Anthony Yarde did have some success in this fight, quite a bit of success. Early on, his athleticism, his superior speed, those fast twitch muscles were working well for him. I gave him the first round, definitely. He caught Artur Beterbiev with some nice check left hooks. And the left hook was a shot that I spoke about pre-fight, which could bring some success for Anthony Yarde, and it did. But you also saw, even though I gave that first round to Yarde, you also saw Beterbiev's superior poise. You see, he's a guy who stays very calm in the ring. He stalks you. He's very economical, but he's accurate. And when I say accurate, it's not just the fact he lands, but he lands in vulnerable areas when he's hitting you, even with his jab. And so that was evident in the first round. And you could sense that if Yarde continues to box like that, he's going to get broken down. That's something I said in my pre-fight videos. In my view, Yarde's best chance would have been to stand with Beterbiev, not like reckless like Joe Smith, but hold the center ring and try and get Beterbiev's respect. Because once Beterbiev builds up a head of steam and he's got you running around the ring, you're in serious trouble. So when Yarde was moving around early, I was like, okay, that's cool. And I get why he's doing it because he wants to use his athleticism, but also he wants to calm himself down, basically, get a bit of success, because when people go in there against Beterbiev, they're thinking, well, this guy's a monster puncher. I don't want to get caught with something early, particularly with Anthony Yarde boxing in front of his hometown fans. He doesn't want to get embarrassed and wiped out in a round, right? So I'm sure that must have been playing on his mind to some extent. So he was doing a lot of movement. To me, it was excessive movement. He was burning a lot of energy, running around the ring like that for the first, let's say, 2-3 rounds. After a while, he started to settle down a bit. I think it was a combination of maybe what his corner had told him, that he needs to settle down a bit, maybe a bit of tiredness, but also because he did catch Beterbiev and appeared to, if not shake him, he was able to get Beterbiev to back off. And that gave Anthony Yarde maybe a bit more encouragement to stand with Beterbiev a bit more. And I personally feel look, Beterbiev probably would have won the fight either way. But as I said pre-fight, the best chance I saw for Yarde in this one is standing his ground, because you allow Beterbiev to come at you, he's like a freight train. He just builds up this head of steam and then eventually you're going to get run over. Now, again, maybe that would have happened anyway if Yarde had stood his ground a bit more early, but I think he would have had more energy for, through the back end of the fight if he'd stood his ground a bit more and not been moving all over the place like he did. Now, obviously, that comes with its own risks if you're standing your ground with Beterbiev. But as we saw against Joe Smith, as we saw against Callum Johnson, Beterbiev is a guy that you can back off. And you see, it's all about round management, managing your stamina in a fight. And Beterbiev is a guy who, if you go at him, if you throw some shots, he will back off. This is not Mike Tyson, who will try and come forward no matter what. No, Beterbiev will back off. And that gives you some respite when you get him to back off. You see, that's ring craft. Get him to back off so you can have some rest from constantly being on the move. Yeah, you can manage the rounds that way. But Yarde was more intent on managing the rounds by him moving, and that doesn't work against Beterbiev. We've seen people try to do that before. Vozdek tried to do that, for example, didn't work. He's going to catch up, he's going to break you down. So by the time Yarde realized that standing with Beterbiev was the best course of action, it was already too late. He was already, tired from all that excess movement and the good shots Beterbiev had been landing, the jab was landing, and so on. And, with Beterbiev, obviously he has the amateur experience, hundreds of fights in the amateurs, and of course lots of professional fights. And he hones that ring craft. That's really what Beterbiev had over Yarde. One of the main things, anyway, is the ring craft. He just has superior ring craft to Yarde. Yarde, more athletic and all that kind of stuff, but the subtle skills in boxing take years for most people to actually develop, and Beterbiev's right up there with the best of them. So anyway, talking about what Yarde should have done and shouldn't have done and all this kind of thing. Bottom line is the fight played out the way that it did. Yarde started holding his feet a bit more in the middle rounds. He did have some success. Beterbiev's jab was popping him. Yarde's eye was looking swollen. But then Yarde managed to land some shots and cut Beterbiev. He came back. There was some seesaw rounds in this fight. In one of the rounds, Beterbiev got cut, and that really spurred Anthony Yarde on. You could see it in his face. You could see it in his body language. He started to come forward more and press it. But I still felt as though he didn't press home the advantage that he could have done. So, for example, when Beterbiev got Anthony Yarde in a corner, he went to town on him. And that happened several times in the fight. He would go to town. But when Yarde got Beterbiev in the corner, he wouldn't do anything, or he wouldn't go to town anyway. He would be kind of circumspect with his attacks. And that actually allowed Beterbiev to turn Yarde into the corner on one occasion, because Yarde wasn't aggressive enough. He wasn't doing enough. He wasn't putting enough damage on Beterbiev when he had him in the corner like that. So that, to me, was a missed opportunity for Anthony Yarde. See, I talk about ring craft for Artur Beterbiev. When you're dealing with a veteran like that, who is 38 years of age, he knows how to get a rest without making it look like he's getting a rest. He's got a very good poker face. There were moments in that fight where Beterbiev was feeling the pace, but he knew how to make it look like he wasn't and just control the action and, bluff you out of pressing it and all this kind of thing. And Yarde just wasn't experienced enough to see the telltale signs that the old man was trying to grab a rest. You see, a more experienced fighter in Yarde's position would have pushed him, would have forced the issue. The gold standard for this kind of thing would be you could say Buster Douglas against Mike Tyson, but I want to say Evander Holyfield against Mike Tyson. When he had Mike Tyson tired, and when Mike Tyson was, looking a bit ragged, Holyfield pushed the issue. The last thing you want to do against Mike Tyson is then start getting on your back foot and boxing. You don't want to do that. If you've got him tired and you've got him missing shots and you're managing to block his shots, get on him. Don't let him start coming forward at you again. Push him back. And it is a difficult thing to do from not just a physical perspective, but a psychological perspective, because, again, they fear the power. They think, oh, God, this guy's a real monster puncher. So even when you should be pushing them back, a lot of guys don't. They do what Anthony Yarde did. They look at him in the corner and throw a few jabs at him. No, you need to be on him. You need to go for it. Maybe he had the Kovalev situation in the back of his mind and didn't want to end up but he did end up like that again. In fact, earlier this time. So fight progressed back and forth, seesaw. For me, Beterbiev was doing most of the best work throughout. When Yarde did land, he'd land maybe on the side of Beterbiev's head, on the top of the head. He wasn't landing in Beterbiev's face that often. There was a few shots, obviously. He got the cut and Beterbiev did get some bruising on the face, but he wasn't landing as consistently on Beterbiev's face as Beterbiev was landing on Yarde's face. And that was throughout the fight. So again, the accuracy of Beterbiev, that ring craft and what have you. So the fight progressed. Yarde, you could tell, was getting more ragged as it went on. He did land a few shots here and there, but again, whenever Beterbiev got him in the corner, he would do some real damage. And you could just see Yarde's energy bar, like you're playing one of those video games, his energy bar was just draining down dramatically every time Beterbiev trapped him in a corner like that and went to town. And then finally in the 8th round, Beterbiev got through with some nice shots, a big right hand, and down goes Anthony Yarde. And you knew at that stage it was over because his shape was all falling apart. He was getting ragged and what have you. He got to his feet and he was looking to his corner. Now, some people interpreted that as Anthony Yarde trying to quit. I don't know whether he was trying to quit, but what I can tell you is in boxing, if you're dropped, this is one of the first things they tell you. If you get dropped, you're supposed to look to your corner because your corner can tell how hurt you are. They're experienced. So they look at you and they tell you when you get up. Now, a lot of fighters don't pay attention to this. They don't follow this, but this is what you're told in boxing. You look at your corner. When your corner tells you to get up, you get up. Yeah, and obviously Anthony Yarde was already up, but you look to your corner, see what they want to say. That's what you're told. Many fighters don't do it. Many fighters feel like They're experienced enough. They're in the moment enough. They've got the heart. They don't worry about what their corner's saying. They're doing what they're doing. It's their journey. They're living their movie. So how do you want to interpret that? Was Anthony Yarde trying to quit? Was he hoping to get Tunde to throw in the towel? Or was he just following instructions of the plan beforehand? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. Either way, the fight was allowed to continue. Beterbiev came in, threw a couple others, and it looked clear that Anthony Yarde was going to get cleaned out at this stage. And then Tunde Ajayi came up with a towel. I don't think the towel actually got thrown in. I think the referee just looked at Tunde, realizing he was going to throw it in, and he preempted it and stopped the fight. Good stoppage. Yarde was done. Brave effort. Good fight for the fans in the arena and on the TV. I think Anthony Yarde's stock will have risen from that fight because he did a lot better than many people expected. I'm not going to say better than everybody expected because there were some people picking Anthony Yarde to win this fight. And for me, I thought that Yarde did maybe about as good as I thought he would do because you really had to pick Artur Beterbiev before the fight based on track records, right? But I always felt, as I said in my pre-fight video, Yarde did have a chance of winning here. And you saw with the success he had that there was a chance there. But I just felt like he went about it in the wrong way, as I said earlier on. Not like he would have won if he'd taken my approach, but I think he would have given himself a better chance if he stood with Beterbiev earlier on, held center ring. I know it's a real cliche in British boxing. They will hold center ring. But yeah, I think Yarde needed to hold center ring and actually try and push Beterbiev back sensibly, Anyway, it turned out the way it did. Yarde's stock, I think, has gone up. A good fight for him next, because this guy seems to have gone missing, is Joshua Buatsi. I'm not sure if Buatsi's going to get that Bivol fight. Eddie Hearn keeps saying that he is. We'll see what happens there. If he can't get the Bivol fight, or if he goes ahead and fights Bivol and loses, then I think that's the perfect time for Buatsi versus Yarde. Because again, Yarde's stock has risen. We'll see how Buatsi does if he fights Bivol, if he manages to put on a good performance. Assuming he loses, there you go. Yarde against Buatsi, perfect time. And as for Dimitri Bivol, I was watching ESPN, so I don't know what they were saying in the UK on BT with regards to the commentators. But on ESPN, Tim Bradley, after the fight, was absolutely adamant, 100%, that Dimitri Bivol is going to beat Artur Beterbiev and beat him well based on that performance. Because for him, Beterbiev was getting hit way too much. He was getting not just one shot here and there, but occasionally combinations were getting through. His face was marked up. He got cut. He was having to back off. And so Bradley believes that Bivol's going to be too much. The movement, the defense, the speed, tremendous hand speed. With Anthony Yarde, he's got quick hands early in a fight, but it's mainly with one or two shots. Whereas with Bivol, he's almost like a Pacquiao. He can reel off real fast combinations, and he's got kind of Pacquiao-esque foot movement. When Pacquiao was in his prime, Bivol kind of reminds me, he has that same kind of foot movement. Obviously, he's orthodox and Pacquiao was a southpaw, and Pacquiao relied much more on his backhand, coming in as a big, heavy shot. Bivol, not so much. He relies more on his jab. But there's similarities in terms of the movement with Dimitri Bivol and Manny Pacquiao. And yeah, Tim Bradley feels that it's just going to be too much for Artur Beterbiev. He thinks Beterbiev too old now. He gets hit too much. And Bivol's actually going to back Beterbiev up in spots and piece him up. So yeah, I can definitely see why Tim Bradley would think that based upon what we saw there. The only thing that I'm not certain of is how Bivol's strength compares to Anthony Yarde, because Anthony Yarde's a strong guy, physically strong. And he was able to, even though I say he's physically strong, I think Beterbiev was still the stronger guy, slightly, because whenever they did get in clinches, I feel like Beterbiev was getting the better of it in the clinches. But still, Yarde is a physically strong guy. Is Dimitri Bivol as strong as Anthony Yarde? I'm not talking about how good he is as a fighter and his skills. I'm talking about the physical strength. And the reason I say that is because that's one of those things that a lot of people underestimate. They tend to look at punching power and speed and footwork and skills and jabs and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of people don't really factor in physical strength. When you're in there with a guy who's just so much physically stronger than you, it has an impact on you that you don't really understand until you're in there. You know what I mean? Sometimes on the outside, people don't realize it. But when you're in there with someone who's just really physically strong, things that you can normally do, you can't do. Right? And in the clinches, you get tired because the guy's ragdolling you and stuff like that. So the reason I bring up physical strength is Beterbiev is very physically strong, as we all know. Will that play a part against Dmitry Bivol? Will Beterbiev be able to impose that real, tremendous physical strength in those clinches and wear Bivol down and all that kind of thing? He's going to need to, because at this stage, Bivol looks like the fresher guy. Certainly the faster guy, can get around the ring tremendously well. But yeah, if Beterbiev can impose that strength on him, the jab, obviously, he's got nice accurate shots, and then wear him down the stretch. It's going to be a real tough fight if that one happens for Artur Beterbiev. But yeah, it's intriguing. Hopefully it comes off and we get undisputed at 175. I'll leave it there. If I remember something that I wanted to mention in this video, then perhaps I'll make a little short follow-up. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did this fight go as expected? Did Anthony Yarde do better than you thought? There were a couple of people when we were, we always talk in the Element group when fights are going on. And there was a couple of people who thought that Beterbiev would blow Yarde out early. And I said, I don't think so. I mean, I doubt that. Well, there was somebody else, Benjo actually, shout out to Benjo in the Element chat. He jumped in and said that he didn't think Beterbiev would knock him out early. And I agreed with what Benjo said. I said, I don't think so. I think it'll probably, I actually said it'll be over inside 8 rounds. I think the fight will be over inside 8 rounds, but I don't think it'll be an early blowout because Beterbiev doesn't normally blow people out early. Unless you go at Beterbiev, right, and you're recklessly aggressive, then he's usually not going to knock you out early. It's going to be a breaking down process, like when he fought Marcus Brown. And most people, it's only when guys come at him recklessly, like Joe Smith Jr., that's when he gets you out early. And I didn't feel that Yarde would do anything reckless. So, yeah, I felt like it would go a few rounds, and it did. Beterbiev, this is what he does. he breaks you down. And that's the one thing as well. I spoke about how on the back foot, you don't want to be in that position against Beterbiev, him coming at you like a train. The exception might be Dmitry Bivol. He might just be so fast and have such quick feet and good balance that he can get away with doing that and be successful doing it. Maybe. But I still feel as though there will be spots in the fight where Bivol's going to need to stand there with him. Do you know what I mean? And back him off with some punches. Maybe just the flurries like he hit Canelo with. Back him off because Beterbiev is very good at cutting off the ring. And his presence, you see, when you watch Beterbiev against Yarde, he's so economical with his movement. And when a guy's moving all over the place, and it's not just the foot movement for Yarde, even the upper body movement and the feints and the twitches and all this kind of stuff, all these moving parts, and yet Beterbiev just coming in stoic, not moving much. And you know that he's conserving energy. Yeah, he's letting you burn up all this energy while he comes in like the big bad monster. He's got you running around all over the place. I know Dmitry Bivol is tremendously physically fit, but I'm just thinking maybe in the final, let's say 4 rounds of the fight, final third of the fight, Beterbiev might cause him some issues there if Bivol's not willing to stand with him, back him off with some shots. So anyway, we'll talk about that another time. I'll leave it there. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page, via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.